What if I told you that Zambia's political stage just witnessed its biggest betrayal yet? Former Foreign Minister Joseph Malanji has been accused of secretly dragging the Lungu family deeper into the missing millions scandal. Is this the moment Edgar Lungu's legacy completely collapses? Or is Malanji being set up as the fall guy in a much bigger power game? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about Zambia's politics. Former Foreign Minister Joseph Malanji has been accused of betraying the Lungu family in one of the most explosive corruption twists Zambia has seen. With the ECL case now tied to missing millions, questions are rising. Is Malanji the real mastermind, or just a pawn in Zambia's power struggle? In this video, we break down the shocking revelations, the courtroom drama, and what this means for the future of Zambia's politics. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to InspirAfrica Official for more hard-hitting political exposés. The Pact of Power. Every empire begins with a pact. For Edgar Lungu and Joe Malanji, that pact was forged in Zambia's turbulent corridors of power. One was a president fighting to keep control. The other, a wealthy businessman turned politician with deep pockets and deeper ambitions. Together, they formed an alliance that would change Zambia's political landscape, and, some say, plant the seeds of betrayal. At first, their bond looked unshakable. Lungu needed loyal allies to hold back rivals and secure his grip on State House. Malanji needed proximity to power, the kind that opened doors, secured contracts, and gave protection against enemies. Each man offered what the other lacked. Trust was sealed not just with words, but with money. Whispers soon began about the millions, cash allegedly moved in secret deals, offshore transfers, and quiet handshakes. Supporters brushed these stories off as opposition propaganda. But insiders knew the pact went beyond politics. It was survival. For both men, the arrangement worked for a while. Lungu's presidency stood firm. Malanji's fortune grew. And together, they projected an image of strength. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Because every pact has a hidden clause. Loyalty lasts only as long as interests align. And when power shifts, alliances often break. As Lungu's political star began to dim, Malanji's choices became harder. Was his loyalty to the man, or to himself? Could he risk going down with a sinking ship, or would he carve his own path, even if it meant abandoning the family of the man he once served? For the Lungu household, this question would become deeply personal. For Zambia, it would become explosive. And for Malanji, it would mark the start of whispers that would one day paint him not as an ally, but as a betrayer. This was the birth of their empire. A pact built on power, money, and survival. But as history shows, every empire eventually faces its test. The million-dollar trail. Every secret leaves a footprint. For Edgar Lungu and Joe Malanji, that footprint was money. Not just a little, millions. And as their alliance deepened, so too did the mystery of where those millions came from and where they went. At first, the whispers were faint. A transfer here. A property purchased there. Nothing unusual for men of influence. But over time, the numbers grew too large to ignore. Offshore accounts, foreign currencies, luxury properties in Lusaka and beyond. The money trail began to shine brighter than the politics itself. Investigators quietly noted payments moving across borders. Cash reportedly routed through South Africa, then Zimbabwe, then further afield. Some claimed the funds were campaign money, hidden to avoid detection. Others believed they were personal fortunes, stashed away for a future escape. But then came the twist. When Lungu's political fortunes collapsed, the millions that were supposed to shield his family seemed to vanish. The accounts went quiet. The transfers stopped. The vault, many believed, had been emptied. And the question turned toward Malanji. As a trusted ally and financial operator, did he know where the money went? Did he protect it for the family, or quietly move it for himself? The Lungu family, already reeling from political loss, now faced whispers of betrayal. Supporters whispered about missing millions, about accounts that once existed but could no longer be traced. Some insiders even suggested that when the storm came, Malanji had chosen survival, cutting himself free from the very pact that gave him power. But the truth remained hidden in layers of secrecy. Bank records sealed, lawyers tight-lipped, and Malanji himself, calm, composed, insisting he had nothing to hide. Yet, the money told another story. Because if the millions were gone, someone had taken them. And whoever did, held the key to the real balance of power after Lungu's fall. The trail of money was more than numbers in a ledger. It was the first crack in an alliance once thought unbreakable. And it left the Lungu family asking a chilling question. When the empire collapsed, did Malanji stand with them or against them? Whispers of betrayal. Betrayal never begins with a public announcement. It begins in whispers, soft, uncertain, but impossible to ignore. And in the corridors of Lusaka's politics, whispers about Joe Malanji were growing louder by the day. For years, Malanji had been seen as Edgar Lungu's right hand. Loyal, dependable, the man who stood by the family in times of power and in times of crisis. But as the empire crumbled, cracks began to show. And those cracks sounded a lot like betrayal. It started with small things. Meetings Malanji skipped. Calls that went unanswered. Legal strategies that seemed half-hearted. Then came the silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. The Lungu family noticed. So did the public. Something had changed. Insiders whispered that Malanji was distancing himself. That he was quietly building his own defense while leaving the family exposed. Some even claimed he had entered backroom talks with rivals, perhaps even striking a deal to protect himself while the family carried the weight of the scandals alone. But was it betrayal or simple survival? In politics, loyalty has limits. When the winds turn, even the closest allies must decide, stand and fall together, or step away and live to fight another day. For the Lungu family, the whispers cut deep. This was not just politics. This was personal. A man once trusted with fortunes, secrets, and strategies was now the center of suspicion. Did he know where the missing millions went? Was he holding them in trust, or had he already cashed them in for his own freedom? Publicly, Malanji remained calm, smiling in courtrooms, insisting on his innocence, presenting himself as a victim of political persecution. But behind the calm mask, questions grew. His silence about the missing funds, his sudden distance from the family, and his ability to remain untouched while others in the circle faced relentless pressure. The whispers of betrayal became louder. And in Zambia's political climate, whispers can be more dangerous than proof. Because once suspicion takes hold, it spreads faster than fact. And the family knew, whether Malanji had betrayed them or not, the perception itself was deadly. The family in shock. For the Lungu family, politics was never just about power, it was survival. And survival depended on trust. That's why when whispers of Joe Malanji's betrayal began to surface, the shock inside the household was unlike anything they had ever faced. At first, they refused to believe it. Malanji had stood with them through campaigns, through scandals, through the storm of criticism that followed Edgar Lungu's final years in office. He was more than an ally. He was practically family. But betrayal has a way of slipping past disbelief. And soon, the questions became too sharp to ignore. Where were the millions that were meant to protect the family after Lungu's fall? Why did Malanji remain calm while others were being dragged into endless legal fights? And why was he suddenly distant, silent, unreachable at critical moments? Inside the family, debates turned heated. Some insisted Malanji was still loyal, that he was keeping quiet only to shield them from further damage. Others argued he had already cut ties, choosing his own safety over their survival. The atmosphere grew tense. Conversations turned into arguments. Trust, once their greatest weapon, now felt like a liability. For Esther Lungu, the former First Lady, the rumors cut especially deep. She had always believed in Malanji's loyalty, calling him a protector of the family. To even imagine that he could be the one tightening the noose around them was unthinkable. But even she began to notice the cracks, the unanswered questions, the missing money, the silence. The family's lawyers grew frustrated too. Without Malanji's cooperation, cases that once seemed manageable now looked hopeless. Evidence that was supposed to exist suddenly went missing. Testimonies were watered down. And the one man who could have filled the gaps stood quietly on the sidelines, smiling for the cameras. Outside the walls of the household, the public was watching closely. The story of betrayal was now in the headlines. Every move the family made was measured against Malanji's silence. And the more he stayed quiet, the more it looked like he had already chosen a side. For the Lungu family, this was more than political defeat. It was heartbreak. To lose power was one thing. To lose trust, that was something else entirely. But the question remained, was Malanji truly the betrayer? Or was the family being played by forces bigger than both of them? The Courtroom Divide. For weeks, the whispers of betrayal had lived in shadows. But in the courtroom, whispers became headlines, and suspicion became evidence. Here, under the cold eyes of judges and the blinding flash of cameras, the alliance between the Lungu family and Joe Malanji was tested in the harshest way possible. From the very start, the divide was clear. On one side sat the Lungu family, visibly shaken, their lawyers armed with files that painted a picture of missing millions and broken trust. On the other side, Malanji, calm, composed, smiling faintly as though the storm did not touch him. The courtroom became a theater of strategy. The family's lawyers argued that Malanji had failed them, that money meant for protection and stability had been siphoned away. They hinted at betrayal, at secret deals, at an ally who had become an enemy in disguise. The words were sharp, the accusations heavy. Then came Malanji's response. His lawyers turned the spotlight back on the family. They argued that the missing millions were never his responsibility, that he was being scapegoated to protect others. And then came the shock. Documents presented in court that no one expected. Papers that suggested Malanji had kept his dealings legal, transparent, and far removed from the corruption alleged by the family. The courtroom gasped. Was this evidence genuine, or just another carefully crafted shield? The Lungu family was left scrambling, their once strong case suddenly riddled with holes. And Malanji, ever calm, seemed to grow stronger with every twist. For the public, the divide was electrifying. Was Malanji the betrayer, or the victim of a desperate family trying to save itself? Crowds outside the courthouse argued fiercely. Some shouted that he had sold the family out. Others claimed he was the only one brave enough to stand against them. But the truth was murkier than either side admitted. Because the documents raised as many questions as they answered. If Malanji wasn't holding the money, then who was? And why did his calm demeanor suggest he knew far more than he was revealing? The courtroom did not deliver closure. It delivered division. The Lungu family left with more questions than answers. Malanji walked away with his reputation shaken but not broken. And Zambia was left wondering, was this truly betrayal, or just the opening act of a far larger game? The Vault of Secrets. Every empire hides its treasures. And for the Lungu-Malanji alliance, those treasures were not crowns or thrones, but money. Money tucked away in places where daylight rarely reaches. The whispers called it the vault. But the truth was far more complex. Investigators spoke of offshore accounts stretching from Mauritius to Dubai. Properties registered under shell companies. Payments that began in Lusaka, only to disappear into a maze of foreign banks. The vault, as it was described, was less a place and more a network, a hidden web designed to protect fortunes from collapse. For the Lungu family, the vault represented security, a safety net in case politics turned against them. For Malanji, it was a weapon, a source of leverage, a way to prove his loyalty, or to secure his freedom if everything fell apart. But then, pieces of the vault began to crack open. Leaked files suggested large transfers made in Malanji's name. Records of luxury properties in South Africa and Europe, linked to companies he allegedly controlled. Documents no one expected to see suddenly appeared in courtrooms and on journalists' desks. The revelations shook both sides. For the family, it looked like confirmation of betrayal. Malanji had not only managed the vault, he may have claimed it as his own. For Malanji, it was a dangerous game. Every leak painted him as the betrayer, even if the truth was more complicated. Yet the bigger mystery remained unsolved. If Malanji truly held the vault, why hadn't he been brought down completely? Some whispered that he had struck a quiet deal with powerful figures, trading secrets for protection. Others believed he still held evidence too dangerous to reveal, files that could bring down not just the Lungu family, but Zambia's entire political elite. The vault was no longer just a financial story. It was the key to power, survival, and betrayal. And whoever controlled it held the future of the empire in their hands. But with every revelation, one truth became harder to ignore. Someone was leaking from inside. Someone close to the circle was feeding investigators just enough to keep the fire burning. And that left both the Lungu family and Malanji asking the same haunting question. Who was really in control of the vault? The betrayers gamble. Every empire produces survivors. And in the ruins of the Lungu dynasty, Joe Malanji was fighting to prove he was one of them. But survival requires choices, and choices come with consequences. This was the gamble. For months, Malanji had balanced on a knife's edge. On one side, the Lungu family, who expected loyalty, silence, and protection. On the other, investigators and political rivals, eager to tear the family apart and expose the money trail. Caught in the middle, Malanji faced the question no ally ever wants to answer. Who do you really serve when the empire falls? To the public, he seemed unshaken, walking into courtrooms with a calm smile, giving interviews that revealed nothing, projecting confidence even as the whispers grew louder. But behind the mask, the pressure was immense. Every document leaked, every rumor of missing millions, every headline about betrayal narrowed his options. The gamble was simple: protect the family and risk going down with them, or save himself by cooperating, by trading secrets that only he knew. Some insiders swore he had already chosen the latter, pointing to how untouched he remained while others in the circle were dragged into endless legal battles. Others believed he was playing a deeper game, holding the vault secrets as bargaining chips, waiting for the highest bidder. The Lungu family, meanwhile, grew convinced that Malanji's silence was no longer protection, it was strategy. They felt abandoned, even deceived. To them, he wasn't just walking away. He was gambling with their legacy, their survival, and perhaps even their freedom. But here's the truth. Malanji's gamble wasn't just about survival. It was about power. By holding back, by refusing to fully align with either side, he kept himself valuable. To the family, he remained the man who might still return with answers. To investigators, he was the man who could unlock the vault of secrets if pushed hard enough. The gamble worked, for now. Malanji remained free, his wealth intact, his influence undiminished. But every gamble has a cost. And for him, the cost was trust. Once broken, it could never be rebuilt. The Lungu family felt betrayed. The public remained divided. And Zambia was left wondering, had Malanji just saved himself, or had he doomed them all? The empire collapses. Every empire ends. Some in glory, others in silence. For the alliance of Edgar Lungu and Joe Malanji, it ended in suspicion, betrayal, and collapse. By now, the story was no longer about loyalty. It was about survival. The millions once whispered about as protection had vanished. The vault of secrets was leaking. And the Lungu family, once untouchable, now stood exposed. The collapse didn't happen in one moment. It came piece by piece. Court rulings that stripped away their defenses. Headlines that painted them as corrupt. Allies who once pledged loyalty suddenly stepping aside. And at the center of it all, Joe Malanji, no longer seen as a protector, but as the betrayer who had walked away when they needed him most. Inside the Lungu household, the atmosphere was heavy. Trust was gone. Every conversation turned into accusations. Some blamed Malanji for stealing their security. Others admitted the family had relied too much on him, giving him power he could now use against them. Meanwhile, Malanji played his role carefully. Calm, strategic, untouchable. He denied betrayal but refused to answer the hardest questions. Where were the millions? Why had he stayed untouched while the family faced wave after wave of legal battles? His silence, once an asset, now sounded like confirmation. For the public, the collapse was dramatic. Once powerful figures now looked desperate. Their empire, built on influence and money, was cracking under the weight of secrets. And the missing millions remained the symbol of everything lost. In the end, the collapse was not just political, it was personal. The Lungu family had lost trust in the man they once called an ally. Malanji had gambled everything on survival and walked away intact, but with his reputation forever shadowed by whispers of betrayal. And Zambia, it was left to sift through the ruins. To ask whether the empire's fall was justice, betrayal, or simply the price of power. Because in politics, nothing lasts forever. Empires rise, empires fall. But betrayal leaves scars that never heal.